Now. All right, I'll just introduce us now. Hello, and welcome to the Elite Prospects Draft Guide stream. I'm Mitchell Brown, our Director of North American Scouting, and I'm joined by David St. Louis, our lead scout. Uh, we're going to talk about the rankings, some other things. Of course, answer your questions. We'll probably have to do another one of these because it's already getting late on the East Coast. Earlier this week, we dropped the 4th annual EP guide. This is our biggest and prettiest, if I do say so myself, who had no hand in the design of it, one yet. So over 400 players, each with grades, analysis, and reports. It's available with an EP premium subscription. All right, shall we start?
Yes. Maybe you should wait for the other viewers from the other stream to join. Just a
all
bit.
20 of them.
Yeah.
So first off,
whoever's left.
We apologize for the major delays. They say it takes a village to start a live stream, or at least that's what I've been told. And so here we are, hopefully the first of many. Hopefully this will be the ugliest one, the one with the longest delay, the most broken one. Anyway, hopefully it's still fun.
Yeah, so we're ready for your questions if you have some. I guess we could start with the questions that were already posted on the other live stream.
Do that.
But maybe the ones who posted them might not be here to hear them, though.
Well, that's our fault. That's our doing. I think the first one that I saw while you looked for them was about Koehn Ziemmer. So how many players who are deficient in striding to that level end up making the NHL? And the answer to that question is not many. I mean, really, you're looking at, say, a Ryan O'Reilly type career where he always looks like he's dragging something behind him when he skates, but the fact that he's so intelligent and so skilled in certain ways, it's able to allow him to offset it. With Ziemmer, in particular, he is going to have to improve his posture. Like, that lower back is just so rounded. It's just you watch him skate and it just seems like an injury waiting to happen. But he also has the clear NHL ability to be able to overcome it. He's an above average shooter, above average passer, above average puck handler. And throughout the season, he really expanded his game and became more manipulative, being able to bounce off the threat of the shot to set up a teammate and vice versa.
Yeah, I really like Ziemmer too, but it's all about the skating. If you can improve it, then you could become this part power forward, part playmaker in the NHL, a top 9 forward at least. He has a lot of upside, but that's why we ranked him in the second round. And we're getting some actual questions now from people actually in the stream. So the first one is about Ryan Leonard. And I guess that person wants to know why we ranked him so high. It was a pretty long debate. Will Smith versus Ryan Leonard versus
It was
Oliver
much
Moore.
longer than the wait for this stream, probably by like 85 days.
Yeah, it took us a while. We made a first version of our final board where Will Smith was ahead, then we debated it some more, and then Ryan Leonard moved ahead. It's just that in the end, we went with the player that we felt we all loved, the one where we had the most confidence in, and we think it's not just that he's safer than Smith, it's that we really believe in his upside too. I think this season his playmaking was a bit hidden because he didn't have the puck as much as Gabriel Perreault and Will Smith. They were mostly the playmaker on this line, but when he did get the puck and when he had a chance to make plays for his teammates, you saw the manipulation skills and the deception and what he could become if he got more puck touches and if he developed that side of his game. So we like the shot a lot. It's one of the better in the draft. We like his hockey sense. We also gave it a super high grade. He really sees the ice well. He's super aware. He's very creative too, and we like the physical skills. Like, he hits everything on the ice, and he has some proper techniques on the boards to protect the puck. So he's a very complete player, more complete than Will Smith, we feel. So that was part of the reason why we ranked him ahead.
And another part of it too is that even though he's going to Boston College and presumably that entire top line is going to stay together, we saw Snuggerud and Cooley play together in Minnesota this year, where where Snuggerud ended up taking on more of the puck handling duty than he had in the previous 2 seasons with the development program, just because the rigors of the NCAA, Cooley's speed isn't quite as much of an advantage as it was against college competition and so on. And so Snuggerud became more of a play driver than he was in the previous 2 years. Leonard probably is going to experience the same thing.
Yeah, well, I'm really curious what he's going to do next year. And he's probably going to play maybe on the same line. We'll see if he's gaining more opportunities, but I like to see him with different line mates and see what he's going to do. Yeah. And someone else says, I'm kind of surprised Musty is 12. Will he improve on his physical game? And what's his offensive upside? Maybe you can start on that.
Yeah, so his physical game is kind of an interesting one. You hear people talk about how he's kind of disengaged and he's not interested, but I think in the majority of my viewings, I saw a player who could be very physical when he wanted to be, but also understood how to get through the hands of back checkers, established body positioning. There's certainly no doubt that he's more of like a handling guy, more of a playmaker shooter than kind of like this hard skill grinded out. But as you look at those skills, you see them in tight as well. And once he gets more comfortable inside contact, or simply when the game demands more of it, like the OHL is the OHL, he's not going to have guys leaning on him constantly as much as he will in the NHL or the AHL. And so I think that will naturally become a bigger part of his game. And I mean, we've all seen at this point Musty's temper. I mean, when he goes out there, I mean, to play physical hockey, it's take no prisoners kind of stuff. And it's easy to see him replicating that in an NHL playoff series and becoming one of the most feared men in the sport. So I think top line scoring upside is fully within reach. It depends on skating and also tightening up the decision making a little bit.
Yeah, and he's very young for this draft, I think, too. He's maybe a summer birthday, and he scored a lot. So just in terms of production and advanced stats, there were a lot of reasons to rank him high. I think we discussed him top 10 at some point,
Yeah.
but some scouts on our team weren't ready to move him that high. But I think he belongs in that top group of guys who have a lot of upside. So we really like him.
Yeah, I also think it doesn't really do, like, his goal totals don't do his goal scoring ability justice. Like, coming up, he was more of a shooter, at least from what I saw. And then this year he ends up playing with David Goyette. And so he's more of a playmaker. He's more of the setup man. And yet in my data set, which I think I had tracked 9 games, he was still one of the best players at scoring chance generation for himself I've ever tracked for a draft year player. And so I think he's going to score a lot more goals once the context changes a little bit. True dual threat guy, a rare one.
Triple threat even. He has the hands, he can dangle.
Quadruple threat, he can kill people.
He has pretty much everything, and that's why
does.
and just as an aside, we value that. Like, we value prospects who have a lot of dimensions to their game. So more specialized one, like maybe Will Smith is again a good example versus Ryan Leonard. He's a better playmaker, like a much better playmaker than Ryan Leonard, but we feel the rest of his game is not as complete, doesn't have as many dimensions, and the more dimensions you have as a player, the easier it is to translate your game to the NHL, to have something work on nights where when your playmaking is not working some nights, you can fall back on other stuff. So we bet that Will Smith is going to develop still in his other facets, but it helps when a player already has those triple threat, quadruple threat game. Do you want to read the next question? I think it's about our pick at 2. Who would you pick at number 2? You haven't seen as much Michkov, but I think you've seen enough still.
Yeah, it's Adam Fantilli easily. I mean, he's if there were no Bedard, Fantilli would be an above average first overall pick. I mean, I don't know what more you could want in a player other than like him being Bedard level. He's dynamic, he's aggressive, he's endlessly confident, he's solid defensively, he can beat you in a million different ways. I mean, everything checks out about him at an extremely high level. He's really a force. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's a first line center within like 3 years, maybe 2.
Yeah. I think there was a clear separation between Fantilli and both Carlson and Michkov for us at the end of the year, just in terms of tools and overall overall development potential, I think he ranks ahead of Carlson already. He's just a better skater. His physical game is even more developed, and he has the same playmaking flashes. So, and in terms with Michkov, I think Michkov could end up scoring more than Fantilli at the NHL level. But it's again a question of dimensions. So Fantilli could probably do more in terms of the defensive side and work on the boards, and he could play the games in many different ways, while Michkov is more specialized as a prospect. Like, he's very offensive. He always plays in anticipation, if I can put it like this, in the sense that he likes to run out of the zone, run out of the defensive zone to get ahead of breakouts and beat defenders. He likes to slow down the game. He has more junior patterns right now, so he's a bit harder to project to the NHL. And Fantilli has better tools, and the hockey sense might be in favor of Michkov, but we like the overall game of Fantilli, his tools, and the way he's going to impact both the defensive side and also more of the physical game, if I can put it like this.
Exactly. David said it all. We got another one lined up?
I really love... No, it's just a commentary on Leonard. That person really likes him as a pick for the Habs, and I think I agree. At 5 is some other prospects I've left aboard. What's the lowest pick Michkov could fall to? Oh, some draft prediction. What do you think?
Ooh. I actually need to look at the NHL draft order because I have no idea what it looks like.
I think he's going either at 4, 7, or 8, and that's just gut feeling. I feel like the Sharks could take him based on some of their previous picks. The Habs, I'm not sure. Like, I see it as 50-50. Arizona, are they going to be able to wait for him? And they want a defenseman, maybe Reinbacher, so maybe 7 or 8. I see it 4, 7, or 8, I think.
Yeah, I think Washington and Michkov is the natural fit. Obviously, you have the strong Russia connection there, but also Washington, if they pick, I don't know, Ryan Leonard, is he going to make them better in the next 2 years? Probably not. And so, yeah, I think 8 is probably the lowest he goes. I mean, who knows? We're going to say this, and then he's going to go like 21st to Minnesota or something. It's always the way it goes.
Maybe it's going to happen. Considering fit and everything else, who should I be hoping for between the 3? Leonard, Dvorsky, or Reinbacher? Whoever is your pick, what is the player's ceiling?
Which team is this for? Montreal?
Montreal again. We have a lot of Montreal fans.
The best fit, I mean, I think the best player is pretty clearly Leonard, and so that would be the best fit when you're talking about a team that is still a couple of years at least removed from competing. You add in the way that the Montreal Canadiens are built presently. They like to jump into the play, lots of activation, lots of puck movement, and certainly no shortage on physical, aggressive players. And Leonard can kind of do all those things. He can be the link between his teammates. He can be the finisher. So for me, it's him. But I'm sure, David, what's your counter argument for Dvorsky or Reinbacher?
I think it's pretty close between all of the players we have between, I'd say, 6 and like 12 on our board. Like, I could see arguments for any one of them. I also like, between Dvorsky and Reinbacher, I'd lean Reinbacher still. I think it would fit a need on defense. They need someone on right defense, and I think he has a lot more potential than he's given credit for sometimes. Because yes, I compared him to Moritz Seider in my video, but that was partly for entertainment purposes. But he has those kind of like first line. He has a kind of offensive mind too. He can jump into the play, activate. He has some playmaking to his game too. It's just that the handling skills need to improve. But if he has some slight development in handling, I think he could do those Moritz Seider thing. Like, he could manipulate opponents at the line and all of this. And his game is already very solid defensively. He has the mobility, so he's both a safe pick and he has the upside too. So he might not have this super boom potential, boom development as Moritz Seider, but it's still in the cards. It's still possible. And even if he just like ends up as 80% of Moritz Seider, 90%, that's still someone that's pretty good. And he has the tools to develop. So I like him a lot too.
I think that's a great argument for all 3 of them as well.
Yeah, actually. We value tools in general because the more tools you have, the easier it is to find solutions to play. And the stronger your base is for development after that.
Where did we rank Brad Lambert again?
I think like 15, 14, 16, somewhere like this. It was the same argument, but he might not become a top 6 player based on how he played this year. Which I still like him more than Cam and other ones.
Yeah, I still like Lambert. I really liked Brad Lambert's progression into like a well-rounded checking forward. Like not that's not an insult, but like someone who can like tangibly make an impact in say a third or fourth line role where he's using his speed to get back, to get up the ice, to create some transition offense, win battles, get pucks off the boards kind of thing. And so that just gives him another avenue to get to the NHL because last year, for the most part, people were thinking, he's a top 6 scorer or not anything at all. And now he has another way to get into the NHL.
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours, but I think
Yeah.
yes, hockey sense matters, but at some point, if you're that toolsy, you're gonna find a way. Like you can just do everything on the ice as long as you follow a system. You're going to be effective anyway, and he can
Yeah,
bring the puck in on the power play. Like he has those kind of skills.
I was
We
just about to
should,
say you can like trip into having success when you
yeah,
have insane technical ability. You can just, oh, I didn't know I could do this thing. I guess it's my new skill set.
yeah, exactly. Going back to the questions, is it hard to gauge the real potential of individuals in this NTDP line? Like how much of their stats is attributed to the line and not the individuals? Sorry for my English pronouncing this. So evaluating players inside an all-star line, how do you do it, Mitch?
Well, you look at your computer for a little bit and then you pick it up and you throw it off the balcony. That's what you do. You just give up and pretend and accept that you can't know everything. I mean, I guess the real answer, like this kind of ties into like how do you evaluate players who play on the Chicago Steel? How do you evaluate players who play on Saginaw? How do you evaluate players who play on the development program in general? When they play on these teams where the things that most modern evaluators put emphasis on are, I guess, built into the system that the team employs. Like the NTDP doesn't dump the puck out much; they carry the puck out a lot. They carry the puck in. They're aggressive in the neutral zone, and so if you're just watching one player in isolation, you can easily be like, "Oh, they're great at this thing," and then you watch them in the entire context of their team, and you realize, "Oh, they're all great at that thing." So how do I figure out which one is better? And so specifically with the Smith Leonard Perreault situation, I think it's often about figuring out the technical ability of the players, as David would say, figuring out how well do they skate, how well do they handle, how well do they shoot, how well do they pass, how well do they do under physical duress, and so on. And so figuring out all these different ways so then you can kind of disentangle their impact from the environment that they're in. So, I mean, it's very long. It takes a lot of viewings to accumulate that. It's not like a 2 to 3 game thing, but it's uh yeah, it's probably the only way at this point. I think like I'm still learning how to evaluate players on the national team development program. Every year there's like 3 or 4 guys who do something completely different than what I expected them to do. So, yeah, still a long way to go.
And there's often a lot of evolution between their draft minus one season and their draft season. Like they sometimes,
Yeah.
like you said, become very different player, and it's just that the environment is so creative. The question was more in general, I think. Oh no, it was really about the US NTDP. But the thing with this kind of environment is that players experiment a lot. They make a lot of play all the time. So you kind of have to factor that in your evaluation of hockey sense. And we got previously that wasn't something we really honed in, but I think with experience, you know that these players are all going to try some insane plays, ones that won't work, ones that will work, and you just have to project them on their best flashes while also accounting that their production is going to be inflated and all you said. So maybe just don't bring down their hockey sense grade too much based on some of their plays they try that are too creative. I'd say that's my lesson. Knowing how Dubas tends to draft, who should Penguins fan keep an eye on at 14th overall? So
14.
yeah,
Ooh, this is a good one. I mean, because there are a lot. I mean, Kristall is the obvious one, right? Although I don't know, given on how the Leafs have drafted in the last 2 drafts, that that's going to be the type of player that they look for. On the other hand, that's a lot of points, and that's a crazy highlight reel. I mean, you could make the same. Maybe Perreault is the guy who fits into that situation better. The Leafs have, for years, been a team that has always believed that they can pick guys who have skating issues. There's
I,
also bigger options too, like Musty, right?
yeah,
Go ahead.
this is Dubas' way to draft, but I didn't read this anywhere. But is it the same scouting team still? Like, did he change the
No.
scouts? If
Uh,
if it's the same scouting team, I think there's one player they could target, and that's Colby Barlow, because he's just a better version of the player they drafted a few years ago in Nathan Légaré, who was a shooter and who had the same defensive capability, who need to improve his skating, was physical. He's just a much better version of that player, but he has the same kind of grit and shooting skills that could complement their top centers very well. So I'm not sure this is going to be the draft to really judge Dubas' approach, because it might be the old scouting staff, but I'm not sure. If it's changed, then it's more an emphasis on skill, and Musty would be a good one, and Crystal that you mentioned, maybe sending Pelika, like a high event puck mover, these kind of guys. What is the biggest red flag that makes you doubt how a player's game will translate to the next level? There are a ton of answers possible. You go
okay,
ahead.
should I?
Yeah.
Okay. So the easiest one right away is trying to figure out how do they generate the majority of their offense. So if the majority of their offense is skate straight down the boards and then either pull up or shoot, that's not going to work in the NHL. You need to have more diversity. You need to weave, you need to use your teammates and so on. The other way is, since we just brought Andrew Cristall up, the other one is doing the cutback or just stopping and then waiting for the middle lane driver while you just like slowly deke around defenders flying flying with their sticks at you, right? You guys in the NHL will just close on you, press you into the boards, prevent you from being able to use that space. And so it really comes down to figuring out the players who, if they do that, do they have the tools to do other things, and do they flash those other reads? And if they don't, then there's a real chance that they're just going to be a guy who scores a lot. The next Corey Locke, is he a player who people know still? I mean, he played in the
Mm,
OHL when I was like 6, so I don't even know how I know him, but
I don't know
still.
who that is. I can add two other. We just look for junior patterns, and there are two other examples that I can think of. Players who stand near the net to score. If they're much bigger, maybe they can translate that and become like a rebound master who just get their stick on rebound and on flying pucks coming from the blue line on shots. But mostly these guys tend to not translate that well to the NHL, because to score around the net in the NHL, you need movement. You need to time your arrival there with the movement of the puck, with a pass coming, with a shot coming. You can't just stand there. And I think players who score by outpacing, I don't know if you talked about this, but just hard workers who just outwork the other team in junior, when they rise in level, the pace of the game increase, and if they're not super great skater, just they need more diversity, like you said. Like it won't work as well if you outwork everyone, and that's your main way of scoring at the junior level. Other questions. Typically, D-men and centers are valued more in the NHL. Do you guys see players like Michkov and Benson falling a bit because of that?
Because of positional value, I would say it's
Yeah.
probably more because of size and those two guys. And Michkov's a very uncertain situation, which it doesn't seem that uncertain when you look into it, but all right. But I think more broadly, yeah, players will certainly slide because of positional value. As NHL teams and hockey in general moves away from kind of like traditional left, center, right wing, it teams should probably shift to that mindset a little bit. For example, David had no idea that Zach Benson plays left wing and hasn't played center in a very, very long time. He was like, this guy's the center because Savoy is always digging on the
At the start
boards.
of the season, just at the
Yeah,
start of the season.
and so I'm pretty sure this was like December or something. But yeah,
Don't
the
expose me
like
like this.
but it's just like it goes to show that some players, when they're when they're not lined up in that spot on the face-off, that just the way that they play is going to gradually move them into, say, doing more of the center duties. And I think in Benson's case, it's probably going to be he's going to fall to like 10 or whatever, and teams are going to be like, oh, well, we didn't want to take him because he's like 5'10" and not a super dynamic skater, and how many of those don't translate, and how many of those guys make it to the NHL? And it's like, well, Benson will, and Benson will be a top line scorer, and it'll be great, and the sport will be better with him tearing defenders up with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we tend to not value positions as much as other NHL teams or other scouting agencies, maybe. But we do use it sometimes as a tiebreaker when two players are very, very close. Like it's like the last argument we could use, because the more and more, like you said, positions are becoming interchangeable in the NHL. So it doesn't matter as much if you're a winger or center. And while defensemen play more than forwards, forwards can better impact a game with one play. Like they can make this one great play in a game and change the outcome better than defensemen. So I think that the value is almost evenly distributed now in the NHL, and it's going to be heading further and further that way.
Yeah. Yeah, great one.
Hey, love your work. Does Mayu meeting with the league play into if Montreal drafts a forward or Reinbacher? No, I don't think it has to. I think it's just a formal meeting with him. But
no, doesn't he have to get reinstated by the NHL to be able to play?
I don't know. Since we heard about this like months after he was drafted, I don't think it's a. I'm not sure if it's a real meeting or not. We shouldn't get too much into this, honestly.
Yeah.
Considering the depth of this draft, is it possible to find a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman in the back end of the first round? Yes, definitely. Do you have some examples?
I mean, you could find guys like that maybe in the back half of the second, depending on how things break down, right? Like there's always a chance that Brustevic hits. There's always a chance that Mania hits because he's just so dynamic. There's always a chance of like your favorite player in the world, Cam Allen, just regains all of his confidence and you start seeing his mechanical ability shine and he can take over games again back in the OHL. So yeah, it's certainly there. I mean, I think in the back half of the first, you're probably looking at, say, more of the
I think Musty's still going to be there. Like Sachin is still going to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
Bradley Nadeau too is going to be a potential top 6 forward with more uncertainty than Musty and Sachin. But yeah, it's a deep draft. I feel like there is a group of elite prospects in the first 4, and then you have a lot of depth from 5 to like 40 something. I could argue some of the players we have at 30 over some of the players we have like at maybe 16, 17. So yeah, it has a lot of depth. I really like this draft, honestly. It has been fun watching it.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument too that some of the guys we have ranked in the 40s could be better than some of the guys we have ranked in the 20s. Like Koehn Ziemmer may very well just end up being better than Hanzek or Jaeger or Brindley or Height and so on. You could pretty much do that experiment with virtually any player in that range, really.
And more than previous draft, I think there's a higher chance of that, like compared to players we ranked previously in the 40s versus players we ranked previously in the 20s. What do you look at when projecting whether someone playing C at the junior level will be able to play C or move to the wing at the NHL level? Well, it depends first on size, unfortunately. It's still a thing. The centers below 6 feet are pretty rare in the NHL, but it's mostly about the supporting game. Like someone like Jaeger, I really like it. Like he played C this year, and I really like his supporting game, the way he would move down low to support his defensemen, stay close to them, engage at the right time, give them pass options. But at the same time, he has kind of this goal scorer play style, and he's not as good of a playmaker. So ideally, a center at junior level has that off puck game. He's able to position well. He support teammates in timely way, and he's a good distributor too. So Jaeger was not maybe the best example to choose then, but he has one of those things, not the other one. So he might end up on the wing, but he's more of a sure center than. Do you have an example for me? Someone who's playing center who might move to the wing?
Someone who's playing center who might move to the wing. Riley Height seems like a good example.
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, and of course, take Oliver Moore, and that's what generally a junior center is going to translate into an NHL center. Very proactive, supporting, very engaged, scanning lots, always in the middle of the ice, being able to make plays to the boards and back and so on. And so, yeah, Oliver Moore is the
Dvorsky,
quintessential center who will stay center.
Dvorsky is a good example too.
Yeah.
Um,
I said yes as if I have watched Dvorsky like more than 4 times
you
this
still
season.
know him kind of well. To what degree will Barlow's scoring translate to the NHL? Is he more likely to be a bottom six guy, or does he have legitimate goal scoring upside? I struggle to decide what I thought about him all year. Same, same,
Yeah.
same here. Like all year, we kept saying he has these great numbers, but we don't exactly see it. We've learned to value production as a team still, and we pushed him up our board just slightly more because he scored 46 goals, I think, in 50 something game. So we have to respect this, and he scored in projectable ways too. He's good at finding pockets of space in the offensive zone, at playing between defenders. He has a great anticipation of the flow of the play, and he's pretty physical. He can score around the net, so he has projectable goal scoring skills, but the playmaking isn't very developed, and he got the puck a lot in favorable situations at the junior level. So there are some concerns there, but I see him more as a middle six guy, second line, who will keep part of his scoring, but will become more of a checker than a pure goal scorer in the NHL. That's my view of him.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing here. A guy who can give you 20, 25 in a good season, maybe 30 if he gets power play time, but more likely north-south guy, flings it on net, real nasty at shooting it off the pass, and some give and go and transition to complement the shot.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good. And plays next to really great centers who can find him consistently. He has that 30, 35 goal upside too.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a very situational player for sure.
Okay, could you speak about Elmeri Laakso? I don't know who that is. I'll be honest with you. Do we have reports on him? Elmeri Laakso? You can maybe look into that while I take another question.
Okay.
Hawks, 19 overall, favorite player around that range. Maybe Simashev is going to be available. And since it's their second pick in the first round, it would be not as risky for them to take him because there's always a Russian factor. We don't want to get into this. It's been talked about a lot over the past weeks, but Simashev is a really nice defenseman in this draft with a lot of upside. Right now, he projects more as a defensive defenseman, but we saw him gradually add to his offensive game during the year. He has those amazing tools. Like we rated his hockey sense as just slightly above average, but the skating is high end, the physical skills are high end, and he can handle the puck. And he made he's 6'4", 6'5", and he can make these perfect skate fakes on retrievals to shake the forechecker behind him. And that's usually reserved those plays for much smaller defensemen. So he has the skating of a smaller defenseman in a big guy's body, and that's what you want at a draft. So and there's other players we talked about, Musty and Sachin. We like a lot more than everyone else. We don't understand why nobody else see it, but I think he would be a good pick at 19 overall. And the Barlows, all of those guys, honestly.
Richie.
Richie. I really like him. It took a while, but now I'm a big fan. Is Michkov worth taking number 2 considering his skill level? His numbers in the KHL, yes, we talked already about Michkov, but absolutely, he's worth taking number 2. We think there's a bit of a separation between him and Fantilli. Not a giant gap, but it's still there. We would take Fantilli at 2. Still, I think Michkov is a great pick at number 2. He has maybe the highest upside in a vacuum. He can score any way you want. So he's a smaller player, but he can go to the net and score around the net just by driving through checks. He can also make plays in transition. He has that chess mentality where he moves defenders out of pockets of space. He lets teammates get into them. He passes them the puck, and he's a great shooter. He's just like we talked about with Barlow. He can enter pockets of space at the right time, get the puck far off the pass. He has all of those skills. He's smaller, maybe more of an average skater in terms of projection, but yes, at number 2, it would be a great pick as a first overall in many drafts. So yes, absolutely. So when does the first defenseman go and who to? What do you think?
I again, I have to look at the draft order, but Reinbacher to Arizona seems like a thing that could happen. I wonder if Reinbacher to Philadelphia, especially given that they just traded away Provorov, has potential of happening. So yeah, I'd say probably 6 or 7.
Yeah, or 5 at Montreal's pick. It
Oh,
would
can
be
you
fine.
imagine Montreal Canadiens fans if they pick Reinbacher at 5th? Oh my God,
They would learn to like him because
for
he's
sure.
impossible not to like. He's just goalie, but with more projectable offense, and he's more mature at the same age. I guess maybe in the details of his game.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's going to be a super effective player, and I think people in general undervalue top 4 defensemen. Like even if you just become like a number 3, it's still very very valuable. 5th overall, maybe you would want that kind of player a bit later, but not too much. I think it's still worthy of a top 10 pick, a number 3 defenseman. Do you see Anton Wahlberg as a third line shutdown center? I've watched him quite a bit, and I think he's a pure project. I don't know what he is right now. Like he could become this power forward. For those who don't know him, he's kind of a big guy with handling skills and somewhat projectable skating. It depends on the situation. Sometimes he surprises us with his skating. Other times we feel it's more of a weakness. So he's a total project. He has the handling skills, the size. He can play physically. He can take pucks from the wall to the inside part of the ice with relative consistency. His performance went up and down depending on the game this season. I don't know what he is right now, and I don't think that the team that's going to draft him will project him to a role necessarily. It's going to depend where he takes his game over the next few years. But shutdown center, that seems not like his game right now. More of a bottom 6 winger, physical checker, but secondary offense kind of guy. Due to the Russian factor, do you see someone grabbing Simashev later in the first round? What do you think?
I mean, without having any inside information, absolutely. I think there's a real chance that it happens. I mean, you just look at this. It's not even the Russian factor. It's that we don't really know what he is. He didn't score very much. He didn't play especially at an especially high level consistently. He's a tools pick in a perhaps less than ideal development. That's not an insult against Loco, but like it's more in Russia in general where player development isn't always the first priority. So yeah, he might be the draft's biggest wild card. I know people are talking about Kristall and so on and where he can go. I think his range is pretty much locked in at this point. With Simashev, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go top 10. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go 32nd. Like, there's just so much unknown there.
We know that not many teams had scouts in Russia, and it's going to depend how much these teams value live scouting. But even on video, we can still spot that he's 6'5" and an amazing skater. Like that argument, I'm not sure it has value for me. Like the tools are just so amazing. He's a super safe projection, like high floor, high ceiling. So he should go. I think a team that's going to have 2 first-round pick is going to bet on him. That might be the case.
Arizona goes Reinbacher and then Simashev, 6 and
Oh,
12.
that would be amazing. I think Fowler can be a dark horse pick in the second round. He looked pretty good for Youngstown in the playoffs, and he's to BC as well. That's the goalie, right?
Yeah, that's Jacob Fowler. Yeah.
This is where we panic and say we don't know much about goalies.
Do we know goalies? Absolutely not. We ranked him
Sorry.
like 70th something. Yeah, that's a question for our goalie guy. Or alternatively, subscribe to EP Ringside and check out the guide where we have a long profile on Jacob Fowler and 31 other goaltenders in this year's draft.
Exactly. Nice promotion, Mick.
Oh, and
Mitch.
maybe DM Greg on Twitter.
Yeah, because our goalie scout is Greg, so he's amazing at what he does. He's just that he does this separate thing, and it would be better to answer that question. Canucks fan here. What would your guys pick be at 11 for them? So who would the Canucks pick at 11?
Well, I think what they should hope for is that Zach Benson falls. And then they get Zach Benson at 11. Local kid, insanely exciting to watch, will not be outworked by anyone, dynamic, really exciting player. I mean, I think that's the dream scenario. But what do you think is most likely, David?
I think that's very likely, honestly.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Well, there we go.
yeah, I think it's very possible that he falls to 11. There are a bunch of players that I think teams could fall in love in the top 10 for. I could see a bunch of defensemen going there, forwards that we have ranked between 10 and 20 going in the top 10. So I think it's very possible that Benson is there. There's Oliver Moore if you want a center. We think he has as much upside as Ryan Leonard and Will Smith, these players. Some people were down on his decision making, and I fully understand why, because he has those moments where he just does weird things with the puck at too much speed. But especially in the early parts of the season, his hockey sense was very evident in the way he manipulated defenders, he used his teammates, because contrary to many only speed guys, he does try to use his teammates. It's just that he didn't play with a lot of support during the season, and I think he picked up some bad habits as it went along. So he became more and more entrenched in using his speed. So I think the hockey sense is above average. He's going to develop his playmaking game a lot. He has the defensive side. He tries very hard every shift. He has developing physical skills. He's a great handler. He can rush the puck. He can make plays, and I think his shot is going to be a threat at the NHL level too. So we really like him.
I wonder if there's a chance that they go high on Tom Willander as well, just because A, Swedish, but B, toolsy, exciting defenseman who's a long way out but a lot of runway. Or maybe they go kind of the boring but solid route in Nate Danielson, who won't blow anyone away, but he's fast, he's improved his physical game significantly, and he can probably lock it down inside your mid six.
Yeah, I agree. I I would hope they would go for a bit more upside than these two players, but they would still be good picks at 11. In an interview with Bedard, Bedard named Nate Danielson as the most difficult person he's played against, referring to him as his shadow. Could this narrative impact his draft rank? Yes, absolutely. I think this
yes.
This is the kind of thing that scouts would cling to and just use ad nauseum in meetings. Yeah, I can see that impacting
if Nate
his draft
Danielson
rank.
is smart, every single meeting at the combine this
Exactly,
week,
yeah.
he walks in and he hits a button on a recorder and plays. He doesn't say anything. That's the first thing that he does.
And to every question after that, just hit the button, no matter what the question is. Yeah, I think you got it right here. And he's pretty good defensively, but I don't think he's this amazing shutdown center because he still needs the off-puck defending to go along with his on-puck defending. I think he's very good at following attackers in the zone, but he still need still have trouble with some words. Still good at following attackers in the zone, but not necessarily at positioning exactly. It will come though. He projects as a defensive center too, so we believe in him. Just have him a bit lower based on upside.
Yeah, I personally, I think that Bedard is just being so mean to Zach Benson here. Zach Benson is the best defensive forward in the WHL.
I agree.
And he's not respecting his buddy, Zach Benson. Can't believe this. But yes, good for Nate Danielson, man. That is, Bedard just did him a huge solid.
I think the chat skipped and I lost where I was. This one is for you. Thoughts on Matthew Mania? Flashes of a good skill and transition play, but is ranked in second by most outlets despite being big, smooth, and right-handed, which is a lot for scouts.
Yeah, so the question with him is production, and then, which actually he led all OHL blue line draft eligibles and even strength points per minute, but how many NHL teams are looking at that these days? Anyway, but the point is that he's more of an improviser. He can get kind of lost a little bit with the puck at times. He's a hill or get dusted defender. It's all like lunging and flat-footedness, but he's physically likes to engage, and so you anticipate that it would improve, but there's a chance that it doesn't. And then offensively, his game is based largely around say, perhaps a skating advantage that might not carry to the next level without a little bit more explosiveness. And so he is one of the draft's best stick handlers, regardless of position. He's one of its most creative players, and very few players try to create like he does. It's just he's a massive swing on upside. If he doesn't hit, he's not going to get close to the NHL. If he does, he could be a number 3, number 4 who scores and just runs over people constantly. So yeah, it's just huge volatility, like both in his projection and also just like in his shift to shift execution.
That's a perfect second round pick, I feel. I've seen so many conflicting reports on Molendyk. Some people like the way he moves with the puck, while others think his defense is a big risk. What made you guys put him in the 30s? I think you've seen Molendyk the most.
I'm actually writing an article on him right now titled "How Tanner Molendyk Could Become the Best Defenseman in the 2023 NHL Draft." I think people who say that he isn't good defensively, it's partly true and also very not true. So in the sense, he might be the best rush defender in the draft after Bo Akey. Maybe he's better than Bo Akey because he's more explosive, a little bit more physical, but he's an insane one-on-one defender. People don't beat him. He gets on them early. He can lay them out. He's one poke away at any given time. He doesn't really chase or overextend. In defensively inside space, he's prone to getting lost a little bit. He can wander away from his check. He can disengage. I think it improved a lot throughout the season, but really it's going to come down to his puck game. Like, he can play in a bottom pairing role with that level of skating ability, with that aggression. It just comes down to how much offense does he have. And for the most part, I would say that the answer is probably not much, but the potential for him to have good offense is quite high. I mean, you've seen him a lot. What do you think about his A, his breakout reads, and B, his play from the offensive zone blue line?
I think Molendyk is a one play at a time guy. Like
Yeah.
he can analyze a defender coming at him and beat him. He doesn't know what to do next. So he runs into troubles. So sometimes he looks amazing if you can beat that guy, earn space, and then have the time to make the next play. But he cannot like read ahead too much. That could develop because we feel as a team in general that prospects who have high-end tools like an above-average skating ability, even in case of Molendyk, it's high-end. They usually have easier time creating advantages for them, so they can beat that first guy, earn a bit more space, and then they can analyze that next play. So even at the NHL level, it's going to be easier for him to do that. It's rare we see tactical development and hockey sense development in prospects, but it can happen. So I think where we have him ranked is the perfect spot, obviously, because it reflects his upside and the fact that it might not happen to.
I think in general, the overarching theme is that he doesn't have much awareness of space with the puck. So he's has this amazing game-breaking tool, his skating, but he doesn't really understand how to use it. He does everything too fast. He like cuts back, twists and turns, and the other dude hasn't moved his feet yet and just presses him into the boards. And it's like, if you waited just a split second longer before you did each one of those moves, you would have got his feet to turn, and then you would have been able to escape with the puck. And you see that in all 3 zones with the puck. It's the big question, right? How much can you teach a player who has always been able to just outskate all of his troubles? So he's going to be an interesting project to follow over the years. I mean, I thought he was a top 15 guy coming into the season. I had really high hopes, and then the offense just has pretty much stayed the same since he was setting up Zach Benson and prep for deflections into the top corner.
Yeah, we have to move on, but the other issue with toolsy players is that often at the minor level they rely on their tools to make plays, and when they have to make reads, they just never develop that part of their game. They were just always faster than their peers, stronger, and then they never learned to play the game the right way. It happened to me when I was from 8 to 12 years old when I quit hockey. I was just faster than everyone. Then everyone caught up to me, and I did not enjoy the game as much after. So it happens at minor hockey, in the OHL, and at the NHL level too. I know EP was pretty high on Rykov at the beginning of this season. He plays a pretty low even game, but shows some nice playmaking ability and positional awareness. How do you guys evaluate this game? You got it, honestly. That's really good description of him. So we see him as this third line a player who could provide secondary offense, who could shut it down, work the boards a bit, make some plays. Like he has a bit of everything, but there is no high-end element in his game. And the issue is that we didn't see progression from him because he got injured and then he came back, played 2 minutes, and I think he got injured again. So we lacked viewings in the latter part of the season. It's not that we forgot about him, but when that happens, we see other players progress. We just tend to move those ahead of him. So he's now in our between 50 and 60, I think, and it's probably where he might be drafted. But he might just explode out of nowhere because he's toolsy and he's reasonably smart, and he played in the VHL, which is not always the best environment for prospects. So we might see him like go become a much better prospect over the next few years. But he's a bit uncertain because he didn't play it enough. What are your thoughts on Daniil But? We really like him. We ranked him at 25 to 24, but you can move him ahead. Like I could see a team having him in the top 10 even, because there is a real boom potential with him. He's 6'5". Oh, this is going to be long. I have to cut this explanation short. But he's 6'5". Usually players who are 6'5" don't translate very well to the NHL, but he's already a reasonably good enough skater. So not like we project him as a 4.5, so slightly below average in the NHL, but it could improve because his posture is not too bad. So he has the skating, the size, he can dangle players, and he makes some pretty smart reads. So you have a pretty interesting package when you project that a few years ahead. And players of his size sometimes are behind in their development a bit, but he's already playing in the KHL. So he has many interesting elements, let's just say it like this. And he's a great project pick with some ceiling too, because if you can't put it all together, you can still play as a checker in the bottom of your lineup, because he can play inside the system. He's smart and toolsy, so we like him. But we just feel like 6'5" players, they don't usually translate very well. My Sabres need a defenseman. Is there a defenseman worthy of the 13th pick? Simashev? Yes, we talked about him before. Simashev is absolutely worthy of the 13th overall pick. He's, I called him a small defenseman in a big defenseman's body. Just that his skating is very good. He has all of the tools. He's physical. He can handle the puck. The hockey sense is more average than above average, but when you're that toolsy, it doesn't matter if you're not high and smart, because you just have big advantages over everyone. And he's already a safe shutdown player with details to his game. So a perfect pick at 13 overall. There's Sendin Pellikka too, who's a more high-event puck mover. Players like Pellikka didn't translate well to the NHL in past years. Soderstrom, Lundqvist. So we didn't want to bring him up too much on our board, but he's a high-end skater and he's pretty intelligent. He can manipulate opponents and make plays at the offensive blue line. So he's both offensive, a puck mover, and his defense is projectable too, because he tries hard. He has some physicality despite his size. A good pick at 13 overall. And I think he fits the Sabres model too. They like upside, Europeans sometime. I could see it at 13th.
What about Goliath? Is he?
Yeah. He's a bigger project. he's one of the best. He might be the best skater in the draft. I think it's still Oliver Moore. He's super fast. He has some Quinn Hughes move, but the hockey sense did not catch up to the feet this season. He's like Molendyk, but an even better skater, more offensive, slightly better reads than Molendyk. It's just I don't know how. There are multiple issues with him. First, that he plays in Russia, so I don't know how he's going to develop in the next few years. We haven't seen defensemen of his type too much come out of the other region. He might not get a lot of ice time. He might have to scale back his game because he's going to play in the KHL and he wants to conserve his minutes. He won't be able to experiment around his skating and make the moves he needs to make to really develop his reads and understand where he can use that high-end skating ability. So he might not develop that, and the hockey sense is more average than above average. So is he going to be able to manipulate NHLers like Quinn Hughes? We don't know. So he's a great project pick. 13th is a bit high for us, I think. That was long, sorry. Best New England prep school prospect this year. Wish we had Daniel.
Yeah, where is Daniel at? Best New England prep. Let me think. No Yeah, all the good prep and high school guys are Minnesota or they play for St. Andrews. So can we include graduates? Because
Yeah.
then it might be Matthew DiMarsico. Where did Matthew DiMarsico play? Did he play? Yeah, he played Avon Old Farms. All right, this counts. I'm saying this counts. Matthew DiMarsico. He's a re-entry, physical, skilled playmaker. Uh, the shooting is pretty interesting too, but he's more of a hard worker. It's the skill is all just flashes. It's the USHL, so anytime a player like really shows something exciting, it stands out, even if it's just once or twice a game. Uh, yeah, he might be the best one without going through the entire draft guide again and trying to figure out the location of all of these players. My brain
What?
is mush. I'm still recovering from writing 150 some profiles.
Yeah, me too. What do you think of Charlie Stramel? Stramel?
Yeah,
You
Charlie
know what that?
Stramley, he's interesting. Like, I think it was really going to come down to what happens at Wisconsin next year, right? Like, that's kind of the big thing with Mike Hastings there. For those who don't know, Mike Hastings was the coach for Minnesota State, and Minnesota State runs this full team offensive zone structure thing where we're talking like the defensemen are passing to each other from the tops of the circle, and there are two forwards covering for them. Like, lots of movement, lots of spacing. Stramel hasn't really had that with Wisconsin this year, which might have been the most poorly coached team that I watched. So with him, it's really just about how much offense was hidden by that poor situation and what are the tools like. And I think the skating is going to be a big hindrance, but there's always the chance because of his size, because he certainly doesn't shy away from physical play, and he does have flashes of in-tight handling skill and off-puck instincts that he could hit as a 4C. But yeah, major question mark for this year's draft because of the unfortunate situation.
Someone asked anyone who is 5 foot or less, 5 5 feet or less.
Anyone
I'm not
who
sure.
is 5 feet or less.
I'm not sure there's a prospect and that's going to be drafted at least. That's that height. How much responsibility does the GM have in making a pick in the first round compared to the team's scouts? That depends on the team, honestly.
Yeah.
How hands-on the GM is. Some GM make. I don't think that's true anymore. Like maybe in previous years, some GMs would make many of the picks, but I think more and more NHL people understand that they have to delegate because you can't reliably know these players unless you watch them quite a bit, like in different circumstances. And that's something you learn as you scout. When you start trying to do this, you think one viewing, two viewing is enough to know a player, but as you gain experience, you understand that you don't know anything after those two. So I think it happens less and less. GMs delegate more and more, but some probably still have a lot of input.
Yeah, and part of that is just because junior hockey is getting better. Like the floor is catching up to the ceiling quickly. Guys are doing things now on the fourth line of OHL teams that would have been first liners on OHL teams when Connor McDavid played. Like the skill level has just changed dramatically. Players have way more skating skills. They're better handlers. They're better shooters. Part of that is better coaching, but also everyone just comes into OHL like a pro these days. And so that makes scouting a lot trickier. You got to watch more to figure out. Used to be you could watch Erie Otters, you could figure out, okay, how good is, I don't know, Darren Radish. You could watch him 4 times, have a decent understanding of what his game is and what it wasn't, and then now you watch him and you might have to get 8 just to fully flesh out your understanding of his game to that same level because there's less space, there are fewer opportunities to create.
Yes. Someone asked about our hockey sense chart, and I think he's talking about my Connor Bedard video. And yes, you can clip it and use it if you want. I'm talking to hockey stuff. Is Brindley the best defensive forward in this draft? He's up there, but no. There are others like Benson, Oliver Moore projects to be better too.
Fantilli.
Fantilli, yeah, that's a good one, and he's physical, so he can engage. When we're talking about defense, like we want players who can engage and separate opponents from the puck, but also position well and have the motor, and Fantilli has all of this. I think maybe Benson is better at positioning and defending off puck, but Fantilli will have the tools advantage for sure. Brindley is pretty good too. He has the motor, the pace, positions well. It's just that he's 5'8". But Boot, sorry, Boot or Hanzek. We chose Hanzek ahead of Boot. Maybe you can talk about Hanzek a bit.
Sure, Hanzek has pretty much everything. I mean, has an insane shot from a mechanical standpoint. He can get low, absorb contact. He can be quick off his edges and tight. He has tons of passing skill. He has handling skill. He has off puck awareness. It's just that as it all comes together right now, he's a little low pace. He's a little passive. He doesn't always take the space that he creates. He doesn't always drive the net when he has an opportunity to. And so with him, it's going to be, if he hits, he could be a real play driver in the NHL. Like, he has the tools to do it, he has the physical skills to do it, he certainly has the want to do it. It just is going to come down to making those reads better. Otherwise, you're probably looking at more of a Joel Armia type player.
Yes.
So which we had Hanzek ranked 20th,
Oh, yeah.
and we had Bout ranked 24th. But what's the
Hanzek.
argument for Hanzek over him?
I think it's just certainty in this case. It's a bit boring, but it's always about judging the gap between upside and certainty. And certainty, I don't exactly mean floor, but more a chance of reaching the upside. And in the case of Boot and Hanzek, I think the upside gap is much smaller than the certainty gap. So when that happens, the player with the higher certainty naturally moves up the board, if that makes sense. You do think that made sense? Okay. Loving the guide so far. Thank you. You can get it at EP Ringside, and we have a promo code too. 2003 NHL Draft Guide, where you can get 50% off on a yearly subscription. With Leonard being so, that's a hard word for me, rambunctious against his peers.
Nailed it.
Thank you. How do you see his offense translating when competition ramps up? So basically at higher levels, do we see his offense translating as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it might be, of the three on that line, he might have the highest likelihood of bringing his current offensive level to the NHL, because you add in the physical skills, the aggression, the confidence, and also the fact that he has the tools to be more of a play driver than he currently is, whether you look at the skating, the shooting ability, the exciting passing skill that he's showing when he actually, gets the chance to not just be the third guy to get the puck in a sequence and so on. And so I think, certainly he has, in terms of production, he has top six upside, he has top six tools, and the physical game might give him more of a first line consistent role.
Half Wall Hockey ask, what defenseman in this draft has the highest offensive upside?
Dragicevic.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we can have some fun with it and talk about some guys later in the draft that might be able to compare, but it's Dragicevic. I mean, the dude was a forward a couple of years ago, or maybe it was back in 18-19, the year before his WHL draft. But he has forward hands, forward shot, forward passing ability, and he's a defenseman. It just comes down to the skating, right? Being able to fully commit and explode from those start stops that he uses to shake pressure from the point. But I mean, he's an offensive genius. When I tracked Tri-City, he led the team in offensive involvement. He set up 19% of their expected goals, which is insane, and that led the team. You would expect that from a really good forward prospect. And here's a defenseman, a position where you'd get so many fewer opportunities, like a quarter of the opportunities to get a scoring chance, maybe even fewer. And he's the guy who's the hub for a team that is otherwise uninteresting. I mean, further down the draft, you could probably look at Etienne Morin, who has the big shot. He can be creative and slippery. You also have Mania, of course. And if you really want to go deep, maybe Rodwin Denizio, who we ranked again this year, who played some forward, scored 1.3 points per game with Windsor. He might be the smartest offensive defenseman in the draft, but he might be the worst skating offensive defenseman in the draft. And so that's a real interesting puzzle that a team is going to have to figure out when they pick him and inevitably develop him.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the offensive defensemen in this draft have skating issues, and then you have great skaters who don't think the game as well. So there's no one as the ultimate package, because I could answer Gulyayev to this, but I talked about him before, and we have hockey sense issues with him, so it's easier to answer Dragicevic. Yeah. And so someone thinks we agree too much. Mitch and David, any 23 prospects that you two don't agree on their potential?
Mania.
Mania, I guess, but the gap isn't that big.
We disagree a lot in like the first like 5 6 months of a draft cycle. All we do is argue, and then eventually we kind of reach this very, I don't know, tepid peace as a way to make sure that the draft guide can actually get out and we're not tinkering too much. So really, this is all a lie. We next by the start of next draft cycle, we're going to be enemies again, and we're going to be arguing over players that we've seen one time each, and it's going to be a bloodbath and Slack every night. So yeah, this is purely just because we had to do this to be able to produce a 1,600-page document.
Yeah. Yeah, so there.
Oh, Lardis. We can do Lardis. We can talk Lardis. This is a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I see him more as a second rounder. I think we agree. Maybe we see him the same. It's just that you think he has more upside, and you believe in that profile more. You can talk about him. I think you have a better picture of the overall player.
Yeah, so he's just insanely fast, can beat guys wide, great shot, and in flashes you see more exciting playmaking ability. For me personally, I'm weighing the skating ability, the shot, and the individual flashes of playmaking higher than David will be. And so for me, he's a pretty clear first-round talent. I mean, I think he's like a more dynamic version of Braden Yeager. Maybe a couple inches shorter or whatever, maybe not quite as refined defensively, but he's more willing to engage physically. The shot is nearly as good. He's faster. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with him. And I think for me, that's a late first, certainly over Danielson, certainly over Hyatt. You can make a case for him over Yeager and Honzek too.
Yeah, I think inside our team, Mitch is more. He ranks more by upside a bit more than than me. I tend to be the anchor of the team, where I try to bring up the player who are safer. But I also do this because I think our team in general values upside a lot. So sometimes we get roles inside the team because we have to produce something that's consistent and has a consistent philosophy. So sometimes it's good to have someone who plays a certain role, I think. We already answered that question. Does Willander have power play potential? Yes, definitely. He's a bit like Oliver Moore in the sense that he plays too fast for his own good right now. Like his offensive game is based on pace a lot, so he tries to outskate defensemen, outskate for checkers on the back wall when he retrieves puck. So his feet do most of the work, but we believe in his brain too. He showed flashes of playmaking, understanding how to create lanes, how to sidestep defenders at the line to get shots through and to connect with teammates. So I think the hockey sense is above average, and we did give him an above average grade. So if he can learn to slow down and really let the game come to him a bit more, I think he has power play upside, but not as much as Axel Sandin, Pelika, and other defensemen we name that were more offensive. I'm going to skip that question, sorry. Thoughts on Ian Scherzer? Do you know him?
Yeah, he was at the World Juniors. That's all I
Okay.
know about him. I know Lassie watched him in Sweden a lot, and he didn't
We don't
score
know
at
him
all.
that
So
much.
yeah, that's a draft guide question or a Lassie question.
Someone thinks you look like Connor Bedard. You look like you could be Bedard's older brother. All right.
I had
Yeah, I
so
kind of see
I've
it.
had two separate people tell me that I look like Michael Bunting.
I don't know
That
what he
I
looks
don't, I
like.
don't that I don't know if they communicated with each other. That I don't know if there's like a back channel somewhere where people are just like, "What does this
On
hockey
you?
writer look like?" But apparently, I look like Michael Bunting.
I have to Google this. Yeah, actually, it's pretty close.
Is it really?
Yeah,
All right, I'll see. I'll see
I
what
can
this guy
see
looks
it.
like. Michael Bunting.
You have
Yeah,
the
okay.
same
Yeah,
form,
okay. I can
face
see it.
form. What happened to Chalet? I haven't been able to watch him since the World Junior Cup. What made him fall? Yeah, we have had. So I think Lauren started a poll saying if you do look like Michael Bunting or not. But back to Chalet, we have had debates and debates and debates about him all year long. especially between me and GD, because
Oh my.
I did not watch Shale in his draft -1. I have to say this, and GD did. So when I started the year and I started watching him, I did not see a top prospect at all. Like, I saw a second runner for the first months of the season, and I continue to see him as not the top prospect. I like the tools. Like, I think he's an above average skater. I respect the shot. He has some playmaking flashes. I'm not sure about the hockey sense and the effort level. And sometimes, I think it's Mitch that said this, players who look like they don't care as much on the ice, it's just best because they can't figure out the game at the speed it's played. So it's a lack of hockey sense that shows up in lack of effort. But yeah, the motor was inconsistent. That's the best qualifier I can say. And while I do respect the tools, I think the risk is too big to draft him in the top 20. So this might end up biting us, and we might regret placing him there. But I think many NHL teams probably dropped him during the year because the risk factor just increased and increased and increased, because he never really showed us his true potential. And some players were just great junior players, and they don't figure it out later on. So it's not because someone was great in year previously that they necessarily become great in the NHL.
Yeah, I think a lot of the hype too comes from his play internationally, like his U18s as an underager, the back-to-back Holinkas, and so on. So it's gonna be interesting to see. I think personally, the OHL, I think Barry has his rights, might be the best situation for him.
Yeah.
It's an environment, sure, it's not going to be a quote unquote professional level, but it's going to be somewhere he's going to get the puck a lot. He's going to be asked to make a ton of plays. And that might mean that we see him play with a little bit more energy, a little bit more urgency, and perhaps we start seeing better decisions as a result.
Yeah, that would be nice. What players on your list do you think NHL scouts are going to like more than you do? And which player do you think you like more than NHL scouts? Oh, this is a large question.
Okay, I mean, I think NHL scouts are going to like David Edstrom, Danny Nelson, Callan Lind more.
Oliver
I mean, I don't
Bonk.
think anyone can like Callan Lind more than me, but for the most part, people are going to like those guys. And Bonk, yeah, Bonk is a great example. They're going to value them more. Um, and then
It's really
Les is an easy one. Les is a really easy one, isn't it?
less. Who do you have in mind?
Jayden Perron,
Yeah.
Riley
Oh,
Height, uh, Andrew Cristall might not even go in the first at all. Grayson Souchin might be like, I don't know, the 65th overall pick,
this
and we
one
got him
I
ranked
don't
13th.
understand. Like, even NHL scouts don't seem to see it as much, but they're it's usually a kind of player that they value. Like, he has the grit factor, he has the playmaking, he's smart. The skating is maybe average, but like everything is there. He should be much higher, I
Yeah,
feel.
like what is the difference in the skill between him and say Will Smith? How significant is it?
It's not that big, honestly, in terms of handling skills. And what would happen if, like, you always have to run these thoughts experiment. What would happen if Smith was playing on the third line of the Seattle Thunderbirds, and Sachin, because he came from that program, played in the first line center of the US NTDP? He would be much higher, much higher on everyone's board. I can assure you that, because the skill is really high. Like, the handling skills, he can make the same moves as Smith, and not all of the same moves, but the gap in skill is not as big as people think. So there's some hidden talent there, and he should be a first rounder. I hope so. Anything to add? No. Do you think the Penguins could be a destination for But Boot or Simashev? They may have had more viewings than some other teams, given Locals goalie Murashov is a Penguins prospect. Yeah, I could see both go in that spot. They both have a lot of upside, and they're probably going to play in the NHL in some sort of role. They're similar in some ways. I think Simashev is more functional, like he's more agile, he's a better skater. The skills, the NHL skills are already there, but Boot is 6'5", so and reasonably smart, so he could always play as a checker, a slower one, if it doesn't work out. But what's really interesting is really the boom factor with both of them. Simashev could become a top pairing defenseman if his offense comes true, and he has the tools to really develop that offense, and the hockey sense is reasonably good. Boot's hockey sense is above average, and I really talked about him, but he has the handling skills, the physical skills. He can make plays. Like, a bit of everything. So when a prospect has a bit of everything, the development is sometimes easier. So I could see them go for both of them.
A new drinking game. Every time David says Daniil Bout's height, you drink.
6'5".
It's been like at least 4 or 5 times already, hasn't it? It has to be.
It's important. People have to know how tall he is.
Daniil But 6'5".
6'5". Simashev is 6'5" too, I think. Those are the players I like. What's the next question? Do you guys have a model to show draft pick values at different pick positions? People have done that in the past. I saved them in a folder somewhere, but you can, I don't know. You should probably Google this. Do you have that, Mitch?
Yeah, so I made one a very long time ago when I was more skilled in the computing world, and now I'm an idiot. So no, I just pull up, like, I think Travis Yost made one, and so I've used his before, and then of course the classic. I think it's the Schmuckers one is the one that I think I have saved on my computer right now.
We already talked about this. Do you think Gabe Perreault will be a good NHL player? We hope so. Maybe we can talk about him. There's a lot going on in that projection.
Okay, how many NHL players, their transition play is skate up the ice, stop, and then throw a bomb down the middle for a teammate to get a breakaway?
Not many.
How many wingers base their game around transition passing and then getting the puck deeper in the zone for one-timers?
Matias Machelli.
A few more. And so how many guys are really good at delaying off the rush and creating offense?
Oh, many.
Exactly. And so, like, the reality of it is that he's going to have a few different pathways, but the one that earns all the highlights, the one where he just like sends a long range saucer pass through three guys, you're probably not going to see that one as much. You're going to see more of the give and go game and the cutback and delay game. And so he's going to be specialized for sure. And to reach his full upside, the NHL is going to have to continue moving in the direction that it is. So maybe it slows down and he doesn't. But I think he's a decent bet to become an NHLer in some capacity, maybe as a third line guy who can set up teammates and create chances, or best case scenario, he's a top six guy who can run a power play.
Yes, the players who are going to have to change their game significantly to make the NHL, we tend to rank a bit lower than other ones who already have close to NHL games and the same upside. Hawks fan here, wondering who you think would be the best pick in that range. I assume it's the 19th range. And you think it would be worth in to trade back in the first round if Simashev or Gulyayev falls? We already answered that question, but yes, trading back, especially in a draft like this, who has a lot of depth, I think it's even more worth it. And someone asked about Dubas earlier, one of the first question, and that should have been our answer. They won't pick at 14. They're going to trade back and trade back and trade back.
That's true.
And they're going to pick in the second round 15 times maybe. That's a likely scenario.
I mean, look, let's just a little thought experiment here. So what, they have 19th. So let's say let's just go by our board. Would you rather have Kristall at 19th or Oscar Fiska-Mugard at 28th and, I don't know, Carter Southern at 55?
Probably Kristall, but it's not, like, it's pretty close in terms of value. I think one is really, it depends on what you value. I would go Kristall.
Yeah, and so like you might lose out on, say, some upsides. You might lose out on some, say, ultimate upside. But if you have an inkling that your guy might be there, or you're really confident in the upside that you already have, and say you want to insulate them with still upsidey picks, but maybe guys who might have a little bit more certainty of playing, then it's probably a smart move if you're Chicago.
Yes. Thoughts on Jayden Perron? Will his smaller frame hold him back? Yes, definitely. But maybe the rest of his toolkit can compensate. So Jayden Perron was a big story inside our team this season. We had him top 10 for a while, but then we liked other players more and we changed our ranking philosophy a bit to make it more consistent. So it just naturally dropped to the end of our first round. We still like his upside a lot because we think he's smart. He has some of the best set of hands in the draft. and some great playmaking moments too. And for a small guy, he can handle pressure kind of well on the boards right now at the USHL level. Like he has those physical techniques, and while he's low pace, his skating stride is pretty good when you break it down. So we think he's going to add more speed than other players who are low pace in this draft. Still, he remains 5'8", so he has to be exceptional to make the NHL. Or he's already a pretty good defensive player, but he has to become exceptional in his checking game to have an impact in the bottom six role, and that seems unlikely. He's more of a boom or bust prospect.
The first question we got in our failed stream was, what's the difference between Perron and Benson? And I think that's kind of an interesting way to answer this question, right? So in Benson, you're getting a player who is even better defensively, a player who is even better inside contact. He's better at making quick plays off the boards, better at finding teammates through multiple layers. He's a better manipulator. He's not the same level of handler as Perron, and so you're not going to get as many highlight reel dekes out of him. But in terms of just like pure effective hockey, Benson has a pretty significant gap on him. And Benson is sort of, if you're 5'8" or you're 5'9" or you're 5'10" but 160, you have to be Benson to be able to play in the NHL. And any step away from being Benson, unfortunately, in the eyes of NHL decision makers, might as well be like you're playing a different sport. So it's going to be a really interesting thing to see. I hope he goes to a team that values that archetype, and it's not like he slips to the third round and some old school team is like, oh, let's just take a home run swing here. I hope he goes to a team that can develop these guys and puts them in a role to succeed. I mean, the sport is better having more guys like Perron in it, more guys who want to create and be flashy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yes, there's a massive difference for NHL teams between 5'9" and 5'8". Like it's a giant gap, even if it's just an inch. Is this the best? Oh, that's an interesting question. Which draft class is better for the US NTDP? The 2019 one or the 2023 one? So
2019.
Yeah.
not a debate. It's okay. So let's just go through the 2019 one. Oh wait, was it? No, the 2018 one.
Oh,
yeah, I was thinking the 2018 one. The 2019
too.
one, yeah, this is definitely better than the 2019 one. It's not even close. 2019 one was Bordeleau, Smolanik.
Yeah, it was one of the not as good ones.
Okay, so let's assume that he means 2018. Let's assume that the person who submitted this question means 2018. So that's Caulfield, Boldy, Zegras, Jack Hughes, Turcotte, Sean Farrell, who was draft eligible the next year. I'm just trying to think of some other guys. Oh, Drew Hellison, Henry Thrun.
Cam York.
So yeah, your favorite hockey player, Cam York. You're a big Cam York guy, I've heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty clearly the 2019 group. No, it has to be the 2019. It is the 2019 group. It is the 2019 group. I'm losing my mind here. Sorry, I apologize again. It is the 2019 group. It has to be. I refuse to be wrong about this. It's the 2019 group. My bad. So yeah, the 2019 group is like super. It's deep in talent, and the top end, like they don't have a Jack Hughes in this year's. The best is Boldy a comparable player to Smith? Is Zegras a comparable player to Smith? I think that's probably a fair assessment.
Yes, I agree. We have a lot of questions left, and we should probably close this soon. So we could try and do like 1 minute per question. We're going to try.
All right.
We're not good at this, but we can try.
Yeah.
Someone says, yes, Casper vibes for... I'm losing my English too. Danielson reminds him of Casper, and I see it too. I think they have the same speed, inside driven. They score near the net. They have the defensive value, the motor. Yeah, they look similar. I really like Matthew Wood. To me, he strikes me as a Boldy type. Do you see it? Like, do you see Boldy in Matthew Wood?
Certainly not on the defensive side. The creativity, the handling skill, the desire to get inside, there are some similarities there. I mean, I haven't seen, say, Matthew Wood get in alone on the goalie and then flick the puck in the air across the goalie and then whack it in like Matthew Boldy did in the national team development program. But he's certainly highly creative. It's just, the defense isn't at the same level, and neither is the skating.
Could Calgary select Andrew Crystal at 16? Doesn't feel like Calgary pick. Like if
Yeah,
you
their
go,
small guys have to be tanks, super
yeah,
aggressive. That's
high
they normally
motor,
small guys and tanks and big dekers.
yeah, doesn't really fit the profile. Colby Barlow has successful NHLer all over him. Love his game. I agree. He's going to play in the NHL also, almost
That's right.
surely. Who do you think has higher upside, Smith or Carlson? Any worries about Smith keeping the same line mates through college? I think, oh, that's a good question. Like in terms of pure ceiling, pure upside,
Hmm.
it's very close. If everything breaks right for Smith, like if he improves his physical game, his skating to play the same type of game he's playing now in the NHL, I'll give it to Smith now with a bit of time to reflect on this. But it's very close, and the gap between their floor is pretty massive. So that's why we ranked Carlson ahead. Any worries about Smith keeping the same line mates through college? Yes, it's going to help him develop his creativity, but he needs to develop adaptability, like playing other style of games with other line mates, attacking different ways. He's pretty locked in some patterns right now, and he knows these guys too much. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Uh, Matthew with skating. Could he become a Jason Robertson type of player? He lacks the physical game, but I think we gave him Jason Robertson as the comparable. So if he can develop his skating stride a bit, his physical game a bit, and become even more inside driven, you could have Jason Robertson.
Yeah, the inside game is really the key here, right? A big part of what Robertson done is just being faster to the middle than guys with his hands rather than his feet, and Wood has to learn how to do that.
Is Danny Nelson gonna stay at forward? Yeah, I heard he played defense. I missed on that in his draft year, but I think he came up as a defenseman and then switched position like a few seasons ago.
Who
Did
did?
you hear about that? Yeah, he was a defenseman at some point.
Who did? Nate Danielson?
No, Danny Nelson, the third
Oh, Danny
liner.
Nelson. No,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't know anything about that. No, I just so my only I watched Danny Nelson in his draft -1 with the development. He played against the development program, and man, he had an insane game. And it's like if I'm the development program, yeah, I would have taken that, so I didn't have to play against that dude for the next year as well, just like they did.
yeah, but he's probably going to stay at forward. And generally, the
Yeah, for
draft
sure.
year position is the NHL position.
Yeah,
Molendyk was good against Bedard, I think. We watched that series, and I wouldn't agree as much.
yeah, he had moments, but I thought for the most part it was the worst hockey I've seen Molendyk ever play in the WHL.
Yeah, I think it's a narrative out there, but we don't agree with this one. Um,
Yeah,
I see Benson as a guy who plays a game suited for center. Yes, I agree.
that's
I agree.
right.
Most
Call
seem to
back to the
assume,
beginning.
yeah, most seem to assume he'll be a winger though. What do you guys think? I think he could play center. Honestly, we gave him Braden Point and as a comparable, and like they're not the same type of player exactly. He's a bit smaller and he needs to work on his skating, but he has everything he needs to play center. We talked about this earlier too. He has this great supporting game. He positions well, supports defensemen. He has the puck distribution game. He was one of the best playmaker in Mitch dataset, and he can score from like he can do everything. Just put him anywhere. Put him in defense. He's going to do some nice things. Yeah. Okay. Nothing to add. What do you think of sending Belika? We talked about him a bit earlier. He's a puck mover first and foremost. His defense is more projectable than other defensemen of his type we saw come to the draft in previous years, like Soderstrom and Lundqvist. But he's still a bit on the weaker side, and he's below average in terms of height. So he might not be a great engager, one-on-one defender. But off puck, he positions well. So might be a passable defender, and the offense is going to compensate a bit. But we have some doubts about him, but we really like his mobility, his puck moving, and he became a better playmaker during the year. It's going to help if he stays at the same level of hockey all of next year, because he jumped a lot between levels, and that's always hard for players. Do you guys put any value at all on the combine? Ooh. To add to that, is there any prospect, of course you don't have to say names, that has controversy that may make them drop?
Yes.
Yes, we can just
Yes,
say
there
yes
is.
and not say names.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we released our draft guide before the combine. Like we don't have access. We can't really interview players and make it be valuable in any way. Like we don't have that kind of power. So, and it's the same thing for all scouting agencies. I think some do interview players, but it's not the same thing as an NHL team. It's more media interviews. So it doesn't matter to us that much.
Yeah, unless we're getting growth plate analysis,
yeah,
then it's not valuable to us.
We did rank Lennartson a bit too low in his draft year, but to our defense, we ranked a 5'8" defenseman that low, not a 5'10". So
yeah, all right, David, keep telling yourself.
Yeah,
I can't wait to go to battle with you again next draft about
because
Cole.
I was responsible for dropping him more. Thoughts on Eden Gauthier and Jayden Perron? Feels like these two could be sneaky picks for a team looking to grab some talent, skill. They're a very different type of player, but not that much too. On the other hand, that's not a great answer. Eden Gauthier is a pure connector, and that's a term we see used more and more. That means that he's not exactly a playmaker. He doesn't create passing plays, but he is the link between his teammates. So he's making the small passes on breakouts. He rushes up ice, attacks the pocket of space, gets the puck back. He plays through give and goes. He's physical. He's very smart. Like I think his hockey sense was hidden this season because he played in a reduced role in a very good team. But you're going to see it next year. Skating isn't all that dynamic. The skills are more average than above average, although some did rank as 5.5 on our 1 to 9 scale. So we project him as more as a middle six, third line player. But he's very safe and he has upside too. Jayden Perron is pure boom and bust. We already talked about him. The same guy asked about Elmeri Laakso again.
Okay. So he was draft eligible last year. We included him in last year's guide. Lassie wasn't a big fan, and then he played some time in Liga. And I think Lassie isn't a fan again this year because he didn't make this year's draft guide. So I would DM Lassie about that.
Yeah.
He's our director of European scouting and generally has far more patience than David does. So message him.
Basically, together we saw pretty much everyone on the North American side, mostly Mitch. I saw mostly the B prospects on the European side, so I don't know that Laakso guy. Sorry. Who has the best edges of the draft? I think we gave that to Molendyk, but it could be a candidate too. Simashev is pretty good. Anyone else? Gulyayev?
Yeah.
Gulyayev?
Yeah. Those are the four.
Do you guys think Arizona makes Logan Cooley the happiest guy on the planet and pick Benson and Brindley? Or do you think they pick a center and a defenseman like Moore and Simashev? We already talked about all of those players. I think the most likely pick at 6 is Reinbacher for Arizona. What do you think of Bradley Nadeau? The player... each time we close our draft board, I always feel like we ranked one player too low, and that's the guy. The skills is just really good. He should probably have been between 25 and 30 on our board. We had him at 35. Amazing shooter, like one of the best in the draft. And I'm writing an article on him, so it should be out in the next few days. One of the best shooters. He has all those techniques you want. He can shoot off the pass, one-timers, catch and release. He has a lot of powers in those Matthews drag shot too. But he played in the BCHL, so we don't exactly know how to evaluate his skills compared to everyone else in the draft. And those guys don't seem to translate as well to the NHL. We've seen that in recent years. And he's going to Maine next year. It's not a very good development program, but they're changing their approach, I think. So there might be something there. He's more of a boom or bust. Like he needs to improve his skating stride, although he has speed too, and his physical game. Like he's not a board player at all. He has a bit of a junior game, not a professional run. So there are some question marks, but the shot is amazing. He improved as a playmaker. A lot of skill. Do you know Bogdan Konyushkov? Is that a Russian? No. Hunter Brew. What do you think of Brew in the OHL? Brustevich.
He's become quite the rush defender. It was a big problem in his draft -1, and then this year it's been a big strength. The way that he gets on guys early, kind of funnels them to the boards, and then once he gets the puck, he's one of the best players in the draft at making the next play. He gets the puck, immediately knows his options. He delays a second if he needs to, but usually he's looking immediately back up the ice. The offense is up and down. I think he's a perfectly fine mid-second round pick, the type of guy you pick hoping he can become a middle pairing guy with a little bit of everything.
I'm going to skip some questions that we already answered. What do you think of Pinelli? Does he play like his brother?
No, not really. I mean, his brother has actually added a lot of pace and speed to his game this year. Though Luca is still like a really kind of crazy high energy, make contact with everyone fearlessly, and then rip shots off the rush. He's not an exceptionally creative player and not really a noteworthy playmaker, but for us, we had him, I think, in the 80s. I think there's an argument for him to go in the second, but just didn't see enough there to suggest the top nine forward.
Sebastian High wants to know about Felix Unger Sorum. He says he's a guy that you like all year more than other ones. He loves the combination of playmaking, defensive play, and motor. What made him 85th on your board? We think he's more of a player who plays an European style of game, more on the periphery, and we like his playmaking, but I feel at some point in the season he could have gotten better at holding the puck to create better advantages for his team. Like, so instead of immediately shooting a puck toward a teammate, I wish he would carry it more, attract defender one way, create more space for the other person. So I didn't think he improved that much, but I do like his playmaking, and he has that kind of vision and manipulation skills, and they show up when he has a bit more space. So maybe we'll regret ranking him at 85th, but he's not a player that is as translatable as others. Oh no, I lost where I was. Someone says your hair is really on point tonight. And he asked does where a prospect plays and where they can play in the future affect your projection? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yes, it has a big influence because of a player like David brought up the thought experiment later. What happens if Sauchin and Will Smith switch spots? What happens to their production? And of course, that's an interesting experiment. But the other side of it too is also Will Smith is playing there. Sauchin is not playing there. And so it's more opportunity for him to experiment, push the limits of his game, and create at a prime development time. And so it plays a big factor. It's better for a player to be playing in, say, Saginaw than it is for them to be playing with some other generic junior team that doesn't do anything particularly interesting tactically. It gives them more solutions. It improves their ability to translate the stuff they learn in practice into game situations. And so, yeah, it's a huge factor. I would argue that it was one of the primary reasons why Nadeau didn't get into our first round to begin with.
Yes, I agree with everything you said. I think we answered some form of many of these questions, honestly. I'm seeing if there's one original one left as a last question. Massive difference of opinions on Joey Willis. Perfect. And can you comment on why you guys have him higher than all of the other scouts out there? I think this is Lauren's time to shine. She's probably in the comments
Lauren,
somewhere.
I know you're listening.
You can probably answer that. You tracked him a bunch.
Yeah, so Joey Willis is an incredibly intelligent player, especially without the puck. Keeps his touches short, frequent, allows them to pile up. Really good at like taking sticks, skating into players, setting picks, creating space for his teammates. And he flashes some more dynamic, advanced skills like deception and tight to be able to create a passing lane and the ability to play off contact, spin off a check, attack the middle. And so in Saginaw, the development powerhouse of the OHL, or it will be over the next couple of seasons, he's going to get a lot of opportunity to use those skills, shine. He's going to diversify his game more. And so it's partly that we think he's incredibly smart and partly that he plays in an incredibly favorable environment.
Exactly. Everything you said. So this is probably going to be it for this stream. We're going to try and do another one maybe before the draft. Yeah, and have it work at the right time this time. Sorry, it took us a lot of time to troubleshoot these and understand how to make everything function, but we did it in the end, at least. So we're probably going to do another one closer to the draft. And do we have anything to add in the end?
No, yeah, check out epringside.com. Check out eliteprospects.com. The subscription gets you both EP Rinkside, and Elite Prospects, and that includes the draft guide. The draft guide has over 400 players, including almost all of the ones that we talked about, each with analysis, grades, game reports, more. It's available with a subscription. It's $12 per month, and that gets you the draft guide for 1 month. Or you can get an annual subscription and save 50% on that, and then continue to check out our work on Ringside. David has an article on no dropping. He has one on Quentin Musty coming soon, and I have one on Tanner Molendyk and also Zach Benson as sort of long form breakdowns. So check those out if you get the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you, Mitch. See you, everyone.
Thanks, you. Well,